Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What is going on? What is going on? Why are there 20 people joined? How is that even possible? Surely not. Surely not. What is going on, everyone? Hello. We've got XXYYs. We've got Chantel. We've got Unique One for Life. We've got Kim, Carol, Kurt, Cutroot. We've got Terso, Kelly, Leave This Carelessness, Fractal Universe. Hello, Fractal Universe. Nice to see you back. Jariaho. I'm struggling with these names, guys. Henry, Chase, Ken, Zoe, and Lada. Lada, nice to have you here. Okay, goodness me. Wow. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but maybe this is the power of momentum. Yeah, momentum counts. Momentum counts. It's so hard when you're a Substack writer and nobody leans into Substack and leans in and keeps showing up because you don't care about something. You do it because you do care about something. You care about saying something in the world. You care about using your voice in some way. You care about expressing yourself. Goodness me, I've got Ben here. We've got Just an Observer. People are popping in. I'm loving it. I don't know why suddenly so many folks have joined, but I'm not going to complain. I suppose I was just reflecting on the momentum and the momentum effect. And I was saying that, man, who comes to Substack? Who's been writing here? I've been doing this for 3+ years, And I was all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed when I got here. I just thought, oh, this is amazing. This is new virgin ground. Seems like such a lovely place. And it still is, but it's gotten dark. It's changed. The crowds have begun to arrive, yeah? Maybe some of us are new arrivals. And it's not to intimate anything disparaging about such people. We're all here because we want to use our voice. We're all here because we want to say something. We want to be seen in some sense. People are very careful about this. I see so many notes saying, I'm not here to be seen. I just want to see. I don't need to be heard. I'm just writing to practice my own voice. Good for you. But why does one post a note like that, right? It means we're sitting with that question and that dissonance inside of ourselves. Why does a human being need to disclaim that out there? Because somewhere is the nagging voice either coming from the field or from inside of ourselves, yeah, about why are you looking for attention? Why are you trying to get your voice heard? Let me just fix this camera. Sorry, I'm a little bit too close to all of this. But if we're honest with ourselves, and I'm sure our reasons are varied, but for me, and for the kind of people that I'm trying to draw in and call and reach, it's because you can acknowledge, at least to yourself eventually, that whatever it is that you're here for, you want your work to be seen, even if it's for peer review, even if it's so you can scratch that itch that's sitting inside your soul. And I have such an itch. I've been trying to talk, do my public thinking, and I would say badly, for at least 5 years. I try to do it on Instagram, I try to do it on YouTube, I try to do it on a podcast, and it never really got traction. And I realized there was something that this wonderful jazz musician called Wynton Marsalis, if you haven't listened to his Nancy Hanks lecture, you really need to do yourself a favor. It's called The Ballad of the American Arts. Oh my God, what a treat. I just listened to that man talking for nearly an hour. And I don't even like jazz, but there's a bit of jazz music in between that they play. But he just unpacks this most beautiful, eloquent story of the American arts and justifies jazz, black culture, American music in such a way that absolutely heals the ideological divide that we think of when we think of America and we think of the relationship between Black Americans and their own nation. It's just the most beautiful piece of language and art. And he says something in there. He says when he was a young man, he became a jazz musician. His dad was a jazz musician, and he wanted in on that scene. He wanted in on that scene. So he was kind of nerdy, had glasses. He went and got himself an excellent education in music and in jazz. And he was an accomplished player. You know, he had put in the years of practice. And then he arrived on the jazz scene and he said still there was a gatekeeping. Still there was a gatekeeping, and the grown-ups, like the natives to that scene, the people who were ensconced or entrenched in that scene, the message to him was, hey man, just because you got a fancy education and you've clocked up so many hours on the trumpet doesn't mean you've earned the right to play. Doesn't mean you've earned the right to play. So he had to earn the right to play. And at some point in time, he wasn't playing the right way, he wasn't playing the right style. And it was during that he discovered what I call archetypally voice with a big letter V. He recounts it years later. He said, I loved what they were saying, but the discussion, the conversation that was being had wasn't what I wanted to talk about. Right. And he means in the medium of jazz. And so there's a conversation that we're all in online here in the world, the news media, social media, the internet is a very clear cutting mirror of our collective consciousness and our collective unconscious. But it's so cutting. If you ever wondered what this collective consciousness is, just look at the internet, right? That is the mirror for that. There's a conversation happening there. And that conversation is all of us. If you zoom out far enough, that conversation is us trying to figure out who we are. We're trying to figure out who we are. And there's lots of people telling us who we are, and we're telling each other who we are, right? And some people are trying to say something different. They're trying to have a different conversation. And it was at that point in his career, he didn't even mention this, but I understood it, that even as a young man, when he was earning his stripes in that scene, when he realized that what was being discussed in the scene was not covering the conversation that he thought was necessary. All of us, each of us come here with a kind of a sole intention to get after something or say something or allow a gift to live through us or allow a profound myth to live through us. And we do that by shaking off the shackles of thou shalts and permissions and say-sos that we get from the crowd, from our parents, from our families, from school, and from the other folks on the internet. And at some point in time, if you realize that what conversation is happening is not the conversation that you want to have, or it's not saying what you think is important that ought to be said, you got to try to find your voice, right? You try and find your voice. Now, some people are trying to do that through the conversation of politics. And what a small, bitter crucible of anger and vitriol and unkindness and disingenuous comments that is. Some people are trying to have that in the horizon of religion. And the way that religion is practiced today, the way that it's controlled by a handful of people who decide what the interpretation of those books mean, or the fact that we're making truth claims about books that have been around for so many thousands of years that didn't understand the context of of ChatGPT and Elon Musk and war in the Middle East and the history of the Crusades and smartphones and frozen yogurt. You know, we need new people carrying the conversation right now. Because even that religious conversation, to me, when you consider whatever it is that is beckoning humanity towards some great attractor that we're all trying to become, or we're all trying to figure out who we are, religion and our ideas, our imposed ideas of God, can be such a small context to hold such an expansive conversation and can be. And so we're all here. I'm loving the fact that more folks are joining all the time. Justin Observer, Thomas, Komona, Marta, Paul, David, and James, one of my longtime friends and online collaborators. James is here. Marissa is here. Folks, I thrive on engagement. If you've got any questions or comments, just lean in, man. Just lean in. And this young man, who's now an older man, probably around my age, probably a bit older, Wynton Marsalis. He just had to give himself permission to play. He had to give himself permission to carry the conversation that he was trying to carry. And that's what all of us are doing here. We're all trying to just find our voice in the great family of things, as Mary Oliver calls it. We're trying to find our voice in the great family of things, and we're trying to say something. Now, not every single person deserves the same size soapbox, but we all deserve a chance at the soapbox, and we all deserve a chance to have our voice heard, and we all deserve like a sense of requitedness inside ourselves to be seen. That doesn't mean that the project that we're busy with in the moment is where we ought to be seen or where we will be seen. And sometimes it means that you're not having the authentic conversation that your soul really wants to have. You're having somebody else's conversation. You're emulating someone else. You're copying someone else. You're saying something that's not authentically yours. But it isn't something for me that's predicated on how important it is about what you're saying. It's whether it's authentic or not, whether it's yours. And we're all here to do that. And I'm interested in figuring out how we do that, right? And how we figure out what is ours to talk about and what it is that we want to say. And I'll share with folks that join. How about a revolution in science and math? Yeah, gosh. That's what James wants to talk about, and I want to talk about that too. But for me, the most important project underneath that is discovering who you are. And you don't discover that by letting somebody else tell you or letting the crowd judge who you are. You don't know what your authenticity is just right or out of the blocks. Authenticity has to be practiced. You've got to say things badly. And that's what we all here on Substack to do. And now suddenly, after doing this for quite a while, I've just switched. Normally, when I switch this on, I'll get 5 or 6 people. If I'm lucky, I'll get 10 or 20. Suddenly, a flood of folks all just joined. And I don't know why. I don't know what I've said that suddenly changed everything. But that intimates to me that there's a power of momentum. There's a power of opportunity. Sometimes the lightning strikes. And when it strikes, you want to be ready. You want to be in your flow. You want to be in the position to know what it is you're talking about. And how are you going to get there if you're not putting in the hours? Excuse me. If you're not saying all those other things badly. I was talking yesterday about how we find our authenticity. We find it by, I say authenticity has to be practiced because you have to say the wrong thing and then watch yourself or notice yourself and then cringe a bit and go, that didn't feel right for me. And that's the feedback signal that steers you closer towards your own authenticity. So authenticity is the one thing. And then the other thing is self-permission. Self-permission. That young man, Wynton Marsalis, has now become a mensch, a legend, right, in that cultural space. He's a spokesperson for jazz and for the American arts and for young people and for our entire moment in time. He's one of the voices I would advocate you listen to. Wynton Marsalis is his name. And he had to give himself permission because at some level, he was never going to get that from his peers, right? Eventually, they respected him that he was allowed to play. And it was a titration. It was a balancing act between having the conversation at the level that's going on and being able to hold the conversation on stage or in an ensemble or in a jamming session. You have to be able to hold the conversation that everybody else is having. But it's not like you can suddenly burst onto the ensemble with your trumpet solo and blurt all over the top of everybody else. There's a subtlety in that. And then every now and again, there's these moments where the lightning strikes, right? Like if you watch the Pixar movie Soul, there's a moment when it's your moment. And then you have something to say and you say it your way. And the thing about jazz or the thing about speaking authentically, the thing about being fully possessed of your own authentic voice is this idea of flow. So then when you're writing or when you're speaking or when you're expressing yourself in whatever way, you're not worried about the question of what perfect looks like. You're right in the heart of the unfolding moment where the imperfection that comes up is just something that you know how to roll with. James says, you are spot on. Correct, Rocco. It takes a strong will, securely joined with true ethics for humanity and life. Yeah, and my strongest conviction, hey, Anna Judge just joined. My strongest conviction is that when moments of trouble, we are at an unprecedented moment in our world. Even if somebody keeps saying to us, oh, the sky's always been falling and civilizations rise and fall all the time. The fact that enough people right now are relating to a sense of profound change, profound ending, just the fact that that is the conversation that is happening makes it real. You don't have to throw scientific or historic facts or philosophical facts at them and say, why are you worried about it? The sky has always been falling. That's the conversation that's in the field right now, right? And in that, so many of us are, something is being activated inside of us. Maybe it's been activated in the last couple of years. For me, it got activated around 2017 in the heart of an experience that I went through, which involved, but wasn't only seminal to ayahuasca. It was also seminal to the quality of conversation changing in the world. It was a divorce that I was going through. It was a way that my soul was withdrawing from the small conversation that my life had created for me. That happened then for me. But for some folks, it's happened in the last couple of years, and some folks are arriving right now on Substack. And they're saying the most incredible things. They have the most incredible ideas, mind-blowingly impressive ideas. These young folks, and I mean young of all ages here, these young folks are sometimes not even, they don't have degrees. They're not PhDs. And partially that's been aided by the advent of ChatGPT. So now somebody with a great idea can work it out with ChatGPT and produce something of PhD level sophistry. There's a lot of junk being produced, yeah. But not everybody who's doing that is just producing junk. The problem is, there's a couple of problems. The first problem is they don't all know how to join in the conversation, right? It's like that young trumpet player. They just want to play their own notes in their own key, in their own kind of space, and it's discordant with everything else, or no one can relate to it, right? So we need to learn how to jam in the conversation that's happening. We need like a lingua franca, right? Like a kind of culture or a vibe or a protocol by which we can engage with bigger forms of conversation. But we really want to get those folks here and give them a chance to stand in the light, because my belief is that when great moments of change come for a people, we're all one people. We don't like the idea of it, but we're all one people suffering one kind of consequence together here. And when such a time of consequence arrives, the answers that we need arrive also in the field through people. Cultural leaders, thought leaders, people with one bright idea that can change so many things, right? People with a different perspective, neurodivergent people that are inclined towards polymathery or inclined towards some bipolar disorder as well. Bipolar people, one lens of looking at that whole project or that whole reality is that they are sensitive to the dissonance that the rest of us have not woken up to yet. Yeah. And they're just feeling it. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to alchemize it. And they don't know how to make this broken connection. And with some of these neurodivergent folks, I can recognize that they see things so profoundly differently. They see patterns other people can't recognize. It comes out in their artistic expressions, in their poetry, in their, and some of them are actually formulating ideas. This is how to think about consciousness. This is how to think about relationships. This is how to think about parenting. And they've got these kick-ass ideas. Right, which brings us to our second problem. How on earth do we give such people a chance to be heard and to be seen? First of all, they need to be sort of nudged or coached into a form of coherence by which we can actually hear them. Because every single person goes and invents their own philosophy or their own framework or their own pathway. And there's these wonderful ideas arriving right now. You folks on the call have some of them. I know that you do. I recognize some of these names, and I've seen people making comments and posting things, and I go and look at it, and I look at it with a different eye, and I go, oh man, this guy's onto something. This girl's onto something. We've got something coming up here, right? The problem is 3 or 4 likes. The other problem is they're using their own language. And so no one can get on board with their language and the 56 million of our closest friends who are also sharing Substack with us, right? We can't all have our own language. So we need to learn how to jam together on that stage. So there has to be some sort of convergence towards a coherence. But secondly, we need to be able to give these people a leg up. You folks that are on here. Marissa says, I feel like everything has been said already and better. Observing and sorting is where I feel comfortable, trying to order the chaos. That's your calling, Marissa. For some people, like Wynton Marsalis, that young jazz genius, right? He felt that the conversation that was happening at the moment wasn't what he wanted to talk about. And if you want to talk about how we sort and observe and organize and distill all of the wisdom and the beauty that's already been said, which I agree with, right? I agree with. But that means that needs to be reiterated. It needs to be refined. It needs to be refreshed. And we need protocols and lingua franca even for that project. And maybe that's a conversation you can participate in. But there's multiple points of salience that are converging together, and we want to hear all of them, right? And I especially want to hear the ones that are about convergence. Because our only response to our fractioning and our isolation and our disconnection and our sense of not belonging and our sense of meaningless has to be the opposite of all of those things. And that can only happen in a context of integration and connection and cooperation and a recognition of the capacity and meaning of soul. Right. So where was I? Yes. What do we want to do to help such people to hold such conversation? Where is this jazz club where we can all get together on Substack and actually listen or participate or get up and jam? Right. It doesn't exist. And what I want to do is I want to create such a jazz club. And I mean using jazz here metaphorically, right? I want to create a speakers platform right here on Substack. Right? And there can be like an audition process, I've created a form. Anybody can DM me immediately and I will send you that form. It's in beta test. And basically it says, this is the conversation that I want to have. This is the bright idea that's coming through me, right? And I'm looking for the torchbearers. People that say, I've got an idea. Let's go this way. Let's go have a look. This is what I believe in. For the wayfinders, people who are looking at problems and are much more interested in what is possible from here and what is still possible in the field. Our Imagineers who can imagine a different way. Our visionaries. I have a vision, guys. I've got a dream. This is what it looks like. Isn't it beautiful? What happens if? What would the world look like if we did this? What would the world look like if we did that? What is still possible? People with a sense of civic elderhood that maybe don't have trumpet skills and don't know how to get up and jam, but they just want to be in the audience because this is what they came to this world for, to be part of the solution and part of the group that cares more about solutions than they do about whose fault everything is. And we need the philosophers, civic philosophers. Do you know what a civic philosopher is? Is the person that belongs to a society, to a polis, to a group. And they just happen to have the vocation to think about things deeply in a certain way, in a kind of systems way of thinking, to say, this is what I think we should do if you want that outcome. And this is what I think you should stop doing if you don't want that outcome. These people are present right now and they're all lost, talking into the void on Substack or on Instagram or YouTube or wherever the hell it is. And I want the wayfinders and the torchbearers and the imagineers and the visionaries and the dreamers and the myth weavers. How are we going to bring all these, what's that beautiful saying that says, I wove together out of all the broken parts a parachute, right? How do we weave together a basket out of all our disparate broken parts, all of our multitudes of conversation? How do we find that convergence? We find it in community, right? We find it through such projects. And this is not the only great idea for a project, right? There are other kick-ass projects. I want to hear about those and share them with the same audience. But instead of TED Talks that just talk about vaguely interesting things, I want to talk about projects and ideas that are aligned to the human cause, to a better future for everything and everyone. I want to hear about the the projects that can have an outsized impact on humanity, on our moment right here where we are. Things we can do at family level, at relationship level, at individual level, at society level, at community level. I want to hear about those. All of those could be keynotes. And everybody that I'm speaking to about this project is getting excited and saying, oh, I'd love to do a keynote. And I'm just saying, sure, come and do your keynote, but make sure it's in language we can all relate to. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be accessible, right? And for all of those other projects that are great, the reason why I'm backing this one, the reason why I'm leading with this one is because this one enables all of those ones, right? If we have a culture of coherence and if we have an audience that we're delivering our medicine into or our technology into or our bright idea into, our story, our beautiful stories into, our poetry into, if we have a receptive audience of well-wishers, people who actually understand the power of engagement and who take some responsibility for sharing the work that they like and spruiking it up and promoting it so that we don't have to rely on an algorithm, ladies and gentlemen, some undead, soulless thing to tell us who we are. That's our problem. We are relegating to the thing with the least amount of soul that is programmed by people with the worst possible agendas for humanity. We are letting them decide the conversation that is coming to the top and is making the loudest ripples. We are letting an undead thing tell us who we are. We are letting an undead thing tell us who we are. Anna says, so many incredible minds on Substack. And likely even in this audience, I love the vibe in this video, super inspiring. Yes, and I want people to get involved with this conversation and get involved with this project. If you DM me, direct message me, I will send you a beta link to test that form. And you can plug your idea in and tell me what's shit about the form, and whether it works or it doesn't. But the point is, nothing has to be perfect. Because if a community comes together in goodwill with these kinds of intentions, right, you just iterate towards better over time. Gary says, hello there. Hello, Gary. Nice to have you, my man. Carol asks, are you looking for one overarching community? Because that is what you are creating here in its incipient stages. With your platform, you are structuring a conversation towards communal cooperation toward the goal of making society better on many levels. Yes, well said, Carol. Carol's going to be our press officer. So it doesn't need to be an overarching project. It needs to be a shared project, right? And each of you can have your own projects and you can always own your own ideas, but you can't all have your own jazz clubs, right? We need one jazz club. And it doesn't have to be this one, but I don't hear anyone else talking about this. And I want to start this jazz club because in this jazz club, these are the kind of rules that I want. And they're not rules. They like the line that we hold, because if you don't hold a line, then the filth comes in and the chaos comes in and the disease that you're trying to cure comes in, right? You can't have the disease rampant inside the quarantine tent, right? We don't want to be playing death metal inside the jazz club. And so how you hold that line is you have an alignment criteria. Is this person, can they at least acknowledge an alignment to such a project? Are they here to promote their own stuff so they can get clicks and likes? and there's no further so that, because I want clicks and likes, but I'll tell you why I want clicks and likes. I want clicks and likes so that my ideas can live in the world, so that the world can be a better place, so that people can tangle with my ideas and push back on them, so that my ideas can get better, so that they can do their work in the world, so that I can feel like the gift of me is doing its work in the world. Right. That's what I want. That's my so that. And if we can have a convergence so that, and if the people that we check that are coming to speak, we can check for alignment, that's the people who I want to listen to. So number one, they've got to be aligned. Number two, they have to be bringing some medicine, some technology, some invitation for the future human, for a version of us that's better than this, better than the conversation that we're having at the moment. They want to lift the conversation. They want to deepen the conversation. They want to converge the conversation. And they've got ideas on how to do that. Number two. Number three, I don't want to hear the same old, same old. I don't want to hear Stoicism 101 again. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear ideology. I don't want to hear no politics. I don't want to hear no theocracy. I don't want to hear no divisive talk, no hate speech. I don't want to hear about who to blame anymore. I don't care about who to blame, and neither should any of us. Because we are not going to get anywhere going back down into those weeds, right? That's the rules of the jazz club. Who's in? Zoe says, truth alone has never been enough. No, it's not. If we want to tip the scales, we have to consciously play the game. We have to play ourselves out of the shitty, dark game that we're trapped in at the moment and play ourselves towards the game that we want. We have to dance our way out of the dance. We have to play our way out of the game. 100%, Zoe. During such phase transitions, I love Zoe's language. Zoe's talking at an anthropological scale, saying that our consciousness and our energetic entanglement and our operating systems that we engage with socially, collectively, normatively, right? You've got to see this as what's happening is we're going through a transition, a massive transition. During phase transitions, systems are mostly sensitive to external inputs. Small inputs can have outsized, disproportionate outcomes. We can, Zoe says, we can influence what's happening from this, what let's call it, collapse, towards an emergence of something that we all greatly desire. But it requires discernment, yes, and discernment is why there has to be gateways. we have to have a gateway for discernment, a gateway for alignment, and a gateway for contribution and participation. We can influence what's happening from the collapse towards emergence, but it requires discernment, comfort with uncertainty. Yeah, that is a function of leadership. We have to find our own leadership. Leadership needs to be culturally shared in the group. When you see bad behavior on a comment or a thread or a post, the disease creeping in, we don't want to have to rely on moderators. We want to have to rely on the community to say, hey man, we don't do that here. We're not having that conversation here. You might be lost, or you might be bringing in a bad habit. We don't roll like that. This is how we roll. Do you want to roll with us, or can we show you to the door? Comfort with uncertainty and operating on kairotic time rather than the urgency of Chronos. Now, it's a wonderful archetypal introduction Zoe is bringing into the conversation. There is this idea, ancient Greeks lived with two concepts of time. Kairos was this winged sprite. He wasn't even a god. He was something else, right? And he was like so a sprite is something that is neither a spirit nor a deity nor a person. It's just this aspect, right, that we encounter. You can be like today. Today, Kairos, a moment happened. You'll be doing the same thing again and again and again and again repetitively, and it's not about the linear progression. Suddenly, lightning strikes. Suddenly, a moment of opportunity arrives. And if you're ready for that opportunity, boom, that's the spirit of Kairos we're talking about. Whereas Chronos time, the ancient Greeks would say, this is cyclic, hardened time. This is just the tick-tock of the pendulum, and you keep going as you are, and the seasons click over and change, and everything's kind of tickety-boo and very predictable. And what Zoe's talking about is, let me give you another example. When the folks were making the movie Gladiator, Ridley Scott's Gladiator. They wanted to do this aerial shot of birds flying over and around the Colosseum in what's called a murmuration. When starlings or swallows or things all move together in unison, it's called a murmuration, and there's this beautiful sort of undulating motion. Schools of fish in the sea do it as well. So they got these ornithologists in to work with the animators, and the animators were pulling their hair out. They said, how do we animate 1,000 birds together at a time? It's impossible. And the ornithologist said, don't worry, I've got some good news. The good news is birds actually don't operate all independently. They do, but they don't. And this is how it works. They've got a heuristic that they operate on. Each bird has a little internal rule that says, I don't want to crash into the bird next to me or in front of me, and I don't want to veer too far away from the bird around me, next to me, or in front of me. So there's this natural elasticity. All organisms in life that have this collective social arrangement have that heuristic built inside of us, right? That is how our social operating systems work. There's an emergent property that comes when people just come together and they want to sort of belong, right? So what you do is you just program that heuristic into each of the birds, and then you push play. And then when you watch actual starlings in the sky cruising around in this massive group, there can be thousands of them in one murmuration. And when one of those birds attempts to catch an insect on the wing or catches a small updraft of wind, the 10 birds around it sort of elastically just move with it. They didn't even ask why. And the 100 birds around them all sort of do it there. But then somewhere else, another thing is happening. And that's why you see this beautiful organic undulation going on. Now, that murmuration, what happens if we get 20 of our bravest souls here who are trying to find voice, who are trying to be heard, who want to just be in the audience and want to be the civic elders who pass the collection plate around and love being there and want to share the good news and just enjoy that vibe. Just enjoy that vibe, right? And if those folks all move archetypally in a direction with purpose and intentionality, you can move thousands. You can move thousands, and those thousands can move millions, and those millions can move billions. I'm not making this up. So it's absolutely possible. Beeson joined. Carol says, you are wanting suggestions for pragmatic solutions to societal problems. I don't only want pragmatic suggestions. I want the wild ideas as well. There's nothing wrong with saying, I have this wild vision, but I don't know what it'll take to make it happen. Just the vision can be inspiring to people, right? As long as it's aligned. Problems of disconnection to ourselves. Yes, but we want the pragmatic ones as well, Carol. Of disconnection to ourselves and others, and the internal and external tension, alienation that such disconnection creates. Yes. And there's a lot of talk tracks. You can spin this jewel 1,000 ways. What we have as a society is a constellation of things that are relevant, a vast constellation. And there are better and worse ways of organizing and arranging these things, and better and worse perspectives of answering certain questions. And there is no single answer here. There is no right way. There's no only way, but there are better and worse ways. And that's why the project is called A Better Way, because we're looking for a better way, always looking for a better way. Zoe says 3 types of time. Ion, yes, that's the great cycle. That's right. Ion and Ananke, which go together because that great cycle is moderated by this principle called necessity. Eternal being, the everything now all at once. That's right. And necessity is what breaks it down into quanta. That's why we have a quantum reality. Yeah. If you hadn't noticed, folks, I'm also a nerd about esoteric stuff and about the intersectionality between esoterica and physics, especially quantum physics. Carol, you were speaking of quantum leaps of the spirit. Yes. Now, quantum leaps, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the orbitals of electrons or the orbitals of our planets. There's not one planet right next to the other. They exist in these bands, right? And when an electron jumps from one orbital to the next, like those bands are in very specific patterned distances from each other, right? But to get human beings from one sphere or field or phase of recursion, like we're kind of stuck in a loop here as humanity, right? And we're making the problem bigger and worse for ourselves. And we don't know how to transcend this moment. We can't just, it's not a small step. That threshold is an enormous leap, and we can't all make it at once. That's why a few bright souls go first and they sound crazy. And then more arrive, and then the wayfinders and the pioneers and the visionaries and the torchbearers and the imagineers and the myth weavers and the philosophers and the poets, they come to make a sense of all of that. And then we build bridges, you see, to these brighter futures. Ideally, a convergent bridge, right? Because the best bridge is made up of lots of convergent threads, right? And isn't only taking one kind of traffic across, but we're all going to a distant shore or to a far bank or a new paradigm, right? That doesn't mean we have to teleport anywhere. It just means we have to endure and facilitate and undergo a profound paradigm shift and a profound change to the narrative that we have, the story that is troubling our psyche so terribly. Carol says, and I think you are speaking of how movements coalesce like-minded people. Yes, I am. Coalesce among like-minded people. Yes, I am. And the earthling joined. So, folks, I've been talking for 40 minutes. I trust that my 6,000 miles an hour ramble is connecting with folks on some level. I certainly, if I can do a summary, let me step back through all of this and then I'll close out and thank you all for your time. We're talking about the conversation that's happening in the world. And we're talking about how who are leading the conversation are the actors who went viral, the influencers, right? People who are trying to lead the conversation, not because they have something profound or meaningful to say, but because they do not, right? Because the leaders that are leading us into this dark place are not leaders at all. They are not leading because they are wise. They are leading because they are not, right? And leadership is a shared function. We are engaged in a conversation. And the way that the conversation is being held and the medium in which it's being held doesn't lend itself to better voices, to the illumination of better ideas, to the introduction of new voices. It kind of plays to people who are happy being disingenuous, who are comfortable selling out their authenticity and their sincerity by stealing somebody else's work, by saying whatever panders to the angriest people in the crowd, by getting ChatGPT to write their fucking comments in the notes section for them, right? That's what's being rewarded. And the algorithm sees no problem with that because it has no human soul. And the incentive structure by which it is programmed is not pro-human. It's not. The conversation is devolving. It's not improving. But we can't go and build a second internet or a new Substack. Maybe we will one day, but we need to start right here where we are with what we have. That has to be a foundational principle to everything. You start from where you are with what you have. And where we are with what we have is folks joining us here on Substack. Why not? Well, why not? Why not? Who cares? Substack is the best of a bad bunch. It's by far the best of a bad bunch. There's a different quality of human being here, but the trolls are arriving. The influencers are arriving. The Chad funnel bro 10x before breakfast with his Lamborghini key, they are arriving and they will continue to fuck everything up. And you cannot mute everything. That is like saying everybody is allowed in on my psyche and on my mind and on my consciousness. But now I've given you the mute button, Rocco. So now you can mute the voices that you don't like. I'd have to mute 95% of the people on Substack to have a wholesome space. I'd rather do it the other way. I create a ring fence and say sanity prevails here. if you want to join this club, this is how we're rolling. Who wants to play this game? Who wants to have this conversation? Anyone can come in and try it out. But if you want to be part of the community, you got to pledge. You got to pledge to the ethos and the culture and the mutual responsibility of that culture and that community's wellness and flourishing, right? My friend Chris just joined. You joined us right at the end, my man. We're talking about the possibility of creating a conceptual jazz club, not about jazz. I'll write you on Substack, a speaker platform, like a kind of TED talk kind of thing, where people can apply for center stage, and they can share their ideas and share their talk, provided it's canned in a keynote, right? And that keynote can be connected with a question and answer session, and an interview, and a Substack write up. And those things can go out to Substack and live on our community page and go out onto YouTube. And all of the members in the community can go and share the things that they care about the most and talk about them and spruik them, so that we can have a human algorithm leading the conversation, not a machine algorithm. I mean, about jazz would be dope. What did you say? All good. I mean, about jazz would be dope. Yeah. Look, I don't actually love jazz as much as I'm talking about it, but I understand the metaphor. The metaphor is geniuses letting their genius speak in a contained conversation that has no rigid structure, but still has boundaries, and therefore can play with infinite potential, right? That's the idea. Because we all have forms of genius. And when they shine, we shine, right? But yeah, a community algorithm, a human algorithm. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. How do I add somebody as a speaker? Add guests. Frater Odie. There he is. I'm going to add you in if you want to jump in on the conversation, my man. Jazz equals spontaneous, coherent flow. Yes. Now, the funny thing is, and I do want to end up, because I don't want to keep prattling on for an hour every single time, everyone. But, I don't even like jazz. I don't like jazz. I've tried. I've listened to good jazz. I can see the beauty and the intelligence and the itch that it scratches for some people. I just do not have that itch. But I like other highly sophisticated and well-produced music. Yeah, no worries. The invitation was just open, man. But gosh, can we not just understand the wisdom of that setup, of that game? Because there is something profoundly genius about that, right? And so I talk about things like authenticity, finding voice, earning the right to speak, as the jazz scene holds a line for. And when we hear about that kind of gatekeeping, we get our nervous system and our psychology gets triggered, and we think, oh, how dare you gatekeep people? Are you suggesting not everybody has a right to talk? Yeah, everybody has a right to talk, man. Just not in the club. Just not on center stage on main night. That's what the rest of Substack is for, and even Substack has kind of community standards. It's not enforced by Substack, but the community will qualify what they do and don't want to talk about. And then people that can't have conversations, have to go to some dank subreddit or 4chan or some other horror show on the internet somewhere. But we need to find the cleanest place we can find, the cleanest street. Gather as many bright souls as we can. Explain to them the project. Explain to them the importance of consent. We don't want people here who are gullible, who are just going along with the flow because everyone else said it was a good idea. We want people who can hold their own line, who can make their own distinctions, who bring their own discernment. Yeah, because when we get such people together, the nature of emergence is such that a whole is created that is greater than the sum of its parts. Number one. And number two, creates a field of possibility, expands the field of possibility in ways that were not present before and were not possible before. And I'm down. I am down for that. James came alive, hitting us up with Miles Davis, Hampton, MJQ. James says, quantum physics, haha. Here is an ignored fact about it. It is based 100% on statistics. And the ignorance of that truth inside statistics math. And the ignored truth inside statistics math. I'm not following your language, James. Is that it distorts, the hidden truth is that it distorts the universe's reality or universal reality. How? The math erases or deletes or ignores time. Yes, because quantum physics is atemporal, 100%. And we're trying to apply temporal physics and its laws. If you go back to Hermetic cause and effect, we're trying to cause and effect always work, but they don't work temporally in a linear way when you take time out of the equation 100%. Schizophrenic insanity. Exactly. Exactly. I can talk more about that another time. Conceptualinstitute.com. All right. So people are saying things at me that I don't understand. I've invoked the jazz nerd in you all, and you're hitting me with things that I'm very quickly going to fall outside of my ability to talk about and still make sense. Gosh, I wish I knew how to pronounce that Polish word, but I actually have seen it before, Zoe. I'm not even going to try because I will murder what little social capital I've built up here over this call. Carol, came in late. Please send me your form. Direct message me on Substack. Go to the chat. Say, hi, Rocco, Carol here. Or hi, Rocco, whoever here. You mentioned about this submission form. I have an idea. I want to do a TED Talk. I want to share. And I will create one for who wants to join to join the community is easy. There's just a Substack called A Better Way Now. And if you keep following my notes section, I'll post about it. It's a second Substack so that this thing can live, the jazz club can live without me. I don't want it all on my Substack. I want to scratch the itch I want to scratch. And I want to make petitions to come and do public talks, right? And I might do a few inceptional ones, but I don't want to run this thing. I want this thing to run itself. But message me, CZG. Now tell me what it is. Now tell me what it is, Gary or Zoe. So if you want in, reach out to me. I'm going to be posting this as a post. Find the post. Come and find me. Come and talk and chat and tell me that it inspired you. Connect. Let me remember your voice. Be heard. Be the human in the ghost inside the machine. Be the human ghost inside the machine. Come and find this post when I put it up. Follow my notes. I'm going to be talking about this all the time. You're not going to be left in the dark, but you gotta get close to this. You got to defy what the algorithm is going to shove in front of your face. And I will make sure I keep coming on you. I'll share whatever links are necessary. I'll make it happen. But catch fire. Gary says this word that I cannot pronounce, sizigi, is a noun, a conjunction or opposition, especially of the moon with the sun. Okay, we're going down a rabbit hole here that sounds beautiful that I want to unpack. I just can't do it now. I will share the other Substack called A Better Way. I will share the link to the submission form. It will be on there as well. There's a couple of old posts and things that are floating around there. But I strongly recommend, I don't know if anyone's watching. It's not in a good state now, so don't judge how it looks. abetterwaynow.substack.com. There's the link of the Substack that I will be hosting this in, that we will be hosting this in, and we'll get moderators and community going. When you walk in there, you need to see it like we all had a community idea that we wanted to build a jazz club. And it's not set up the way we wanted to. The lighting's wrong. The logos are wrong. It's saying confusing things. You've got to imagine somebody else ran a different kind of project or business in that place, and we're going to shop fit it and do the lighting in the lounge, and we're going to make it look the way we want it to look. It'll come. But I can't do it all myself. I need help. So whatever you see is wrong with it, don't be turned off. Just that goes into a backlog, another kind of list of all the recommendations and ideas we need to stand such a project up, a community project. So don't judge the room that you walk into when you click on that link and say, oh, this isn't what I expected. We're going to make it as we expected. Okay, folks, give me lots of love hearts. I think that helps the infernal algorithm. Bless you all. Bless you all for coming, and bless this kairotic moment for bringing us all together in such a wonderful shared moment. Okay, I'm feeling a lot of hope at the moment. I'm feeling a lot of hope. If the kind of thing that I'm talking about is setting you on fire, my notes stream or my notes feed, I'm constantly sharing, echoing similar voices wherever I find them. Right. And this is linking to the most profoundly beautiful messages for our time, invitations, podcasts, YouTube videos, all sorts of things that resonate with this. So follow and you'll find it. Love you all. Thank you very much and take care. Have a beautiful evening.